Welcome back to this, my thing. Today I will be talking about ECT, Electroconvulsive Therapy is its full title. ECT, what's that song? ECT, because you are crazy, it's good for PSTD, EUPD, ECT for you and me, girl. A little ditty there to warm us up. I was going to have a sip of my tea. I know you're probably not supposed to do things like that, are you? When you're vlogging. But I like breaking the rules. Yeah, ECT, Electroconvulsive Therapy. I wanted to talk about it because I had it done in 2017. I had 2 sessions a week, I think for 6 weeks, so 12 sessions in all. And I'd go so far as to say it probably saved my life. I was in a really bad way, suicidal, self-harming, just in a quagmire of darkness. And ECT is kind of a last resort treatment because it's quite extreme. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read something out about it because I can't learn everything there is to know about electroconvulsive therapy. I just can't do that. I don't have the capacity in my brain to learn the jargon. So I'm just going to quickly say this. This is an overview. Electroconvulsive therapy, here we go, is a procedure done under general anaesthesia in which small electric currents are passed through the brain, intentionally triggering a brief seizure. A fly has just landed on my thumb. Can you see that? Oh, it's gone. ECT seems to cause changes in brain chemistry that can quickly reverse symptoms of certain medical health conditions. So that's a kind of a brief thing about what it is. I think most people, if you have heard of it, some people haven't heard of it, I would say most people, when they think of electroconvulsive therapy or ECT, they imagine somebody with almost like Frankenstein's monster with the bolts and, that kind of thing. And I think that's kind of what happens. But because you're under anaesthetic and because you're also, I think they give you sedatives, so muscle relaxants, you don't lie on the table going, you're still, but apparently your feet can twitch, I think. I had it done, yes, because I'd been on almost every kind of antidepressant that there is. And the thing about the medication is that each antidepressant you try, you have to give it a certain amount of time to work. So that could be, I think they can take up to like 4 weeks to 6 weeks to 8 weeks to kick in, to have an effect. So you could be spending 2 months just getting used to one particular antidepressant. So let's say that's fluoxetine, Prozac, which is what I'm on, which is what I take and have I always come back to it. It seems to be the one that works the best for me. So yeah, you can be taking an antidepressant every day for up to, what did I say? 2 months? A month? 8 weeks? 2 months before you notice any effect. That's a bit of a head fug, because usually when you're taking antidepressants because you're feeling very depressed, and a lot of us, we can't wait 2 months to feel better. If you're really desperate, you need to feel better much sooner, or you're at risk of hurting yourself or other people, or any of that kind of thing. So there's the time factor in as much as seeing the effect it has and whether or not it's going to work for you. And then there's also side effects. So, for example, fluoxetine, which I take, There are numerous side effects. The ones that I've noticed the most are dry mouth. My mouth is always dry. I pretty much constantly have to chew chewing gum. I'm trying not to do it in the video because I think it's probably horrible to watch someone going. I don't chew gum like that, but anyway. But yeah, so and that's why I have to drink quite a lot as well. So dry mouth, yeah, big one. And dry mouth, you kind of think, well, dry mouth, that's not a bad side effect. But when you've got it, you realise how bad dry mouth is. Then another one was weight gain. Yeah. And that happens with a lot of the antidepressants I've tried. You kind of start to balloon. Another one is low libido. Although that didn't really affect me, low libido. It was more that, how do I put this in a polite way? My downstairs region became quite numb and just didn't feel the same as it does when I'm not on antidepressants. It's probably far too much information, but I think people need to talk about these things because they're a part of life, aren't they? And I don't know, some people, whenever I used to talk about low libido or affecting your sex drive or affecting the way your sensitivity, people would always say, well, surely, that's better than being depressed. So it's like either you're depressed, but you have a good sex drive. Although a lot of people, yeah, you see, I was a little bit different because a lot of people, when they're depressed, they lose all sexual feelings, sexual drive, any of that. I never have. When I'm depressed, I still like sex and I still want to have sex. And I do on the antidepressants, but they take away some of the feeling. So it's kind of, you're tossing up. For me, I'm tossing up feeling versus being depressed. It's really hard to get it right. That's all I'll say about it. That's what I'm trying to say. It's really hard to get it right. But there are a plethora of other horrible side effects that you can get from antidepressants. The list will, there's hundreds and thousands of things, and I don't read them. When I start a new medication, I don't read the side effects because of the kind of person I am. I will then imagine that I have every single one of those side effects. So it's just not worth it. But what I do notice is that when I take a new drug, if there are side effects, then they'll be quite apparent because they'll be out of my, I'll be out of my comfort zone. Things will happen which haven't happened before. Like I've taken medication in the past that's made my feet and my ankles swell up. And that was really uncomfortable. So that was obvious because I took the medication. That happened. I stopped taking the medication. The feet de-swelled. So yes. So with medication, you've got the thing of waiting for it to see if it works, to see if it helps you, plus whether or not the side effects that you might suffer are worth suffering for the benefits that you're getting from the pill. It's not easy. And then if you think of how many antidepressants there are, and there are a lot on the market, and they're all different kinds, SSRIs, tricyclic, SS something and something, I don't know, this fly is driving me mad. It's all sleepy and slow. MOML? Yeah, there's a lot of different. MOML. There's another one. There's another category anyway. So there's a lot to get through, and each one you're going to have to go through and figure out. So I tried a lot of them, and like I said, the one that always seems to work the best for me is the fluoxetine, which is Prozac. The brand name is Prozac, which is a very well-known one. It's probably the most well-known one. I think there was, when antidepressants first became kind of mainstream, Prozac was what people talked about. And I think there are books with the title, fiction books. I'm sure there's one about Prozac. which was kind of a cult fiction book. But at certain points, even that doesn't help me. If I'm in a really bad depression, medication doesn't help me. And that's where I'd got to. I was desperate. I think I would have done anything. So when my psychiatrist suggested ECT, I really didn't think about it. I just said, yes, let's try it. I wasn't too concerned about what it involved or if it would be a dangerous thing to have done, or so I just said yes. And then I kind of learned more about it. I watched some YouTube videos from a girl who'd had it done, a young woman who'd had ECT done, to kind of see how she'd found it, if it helped, what her experience had been like. There aren't, I have to say, because I did research people's experiences of it, rather than looking at what it involved, I looked at kind of how it had affected people. There wasn't a lot of information out there. There weren't that many people talking about it on YouTube videos or in blogs or anything. But like I said, I was desperate, and I said, yeah, let's go for it. So yeah, I had 2 sessions a week. Like I said, for about, I think it must have been 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 6 weeks, 12 sessions in total. Yeah, I think that was 12 sessions in total. And it helped a lot. I probably need to go into the actual kind of the procedure and what it entails, because you have to have a general anaesthetic. It's not like you just going in and they're buzzing you and you can just walk straight out. You have to recover from the general anaesthetic, having 2 a week. There are risks involved with general anaesthetics. There's all sorts of stuff. You can't drive while you're having treatment. So it's a big thing. And of course, there's always, again, the risk that it might not work, or that it might have really bad effects on you. It did work for me. It helped me. I felt the depression lift, and I was able to function properly in a way that I hadn't been functioning. And when I mean not functioning, I mean unable to get dressed, unable to brush my teeth, unable to see anyone, talk to anyone, just literally hiding under my duvet in abject despair, So to suddenly be able to wash your face and it not feel like you're undertaking some great trial, because I know most people wash their faces every day, and it's not a sort of a thing, is it? You just wash your face. But when you're depressed, washing your face is hard work. And you don't see the point. What's the point? What's the point in washing your face when everything is doomed? So yeah, I felt the depression lift, but my anxiety levels went absolutely, they just skyrocketed through the roof. I was in a constant state of terror about everything. For just walking, I would be thinking I'm going to fall over and break my knees. Break my knees, is that a thing? I'm going to fall over and I'm going to everything was catastrophically dangerous in my mind. Just the most mundane things, like driving. I love driving. I think I'm a fairly good driver, but I would be terrified that I was going to be in a car accident. Getting on a bus, I would be terrified the bus was going to crash. Going into a shop, I would be terrified that people would talk to me and they'd want to, and I wouldn't be able to speak because I was hyperventilating with panic attacks. So it was this weird thing where the anxiety, which I've always had a little bit of, but it's been much more, my thing has been much more depression based. The anxiety was like crazy suddenly, when it hadn't been that crazy. And I wonder if that's because, that it's like depression suppresses everything. So it's almost as if the anxiety can't come out. It's maybe it's like buried under the depression, so that when the depression lifts, all that anxiety can just come vomiting out of your psyche and, your brain, your thoughts, whatever. Can you hear that high-pitched tone? I've got tinnitus. Sometimes I get it in my ears, but it sounds like it's coming from the room. Maybe I'm imagining it. Anyway, yeah. So it worked in that way. Were there side effects? Yes. The side effects for me were memory loss, big time memory loss. 2017 as a year, apart from sort of bits and pieces, is pretty much a blank for me. And sometimes I'll be talking to somebody and they'll refer to something that happened in 2017, and I'm thinking, what are you talking about? I wasn't there. That didn't happen to me. And it turns out that it did, but I just have no memory, and that's quite scary. Especially, I think, because I've always had a really good memory. I've always found it quite easy to learn stuff and to retain information. So that was a bit of a shock. And it has affected my short-term memory since then. Long-term memory is not so bad, but I forget things now very quickly. I can't retain that much information, new information, and I find myself doing things like telling people the same thing more than once, which is something that really irritates me when other people do it. It drives me mad when people tell you a story 50 times over and you're like, I've heard this so many times, but I now do that. And this I can be talking or thinking or having a conversation, and suddenly my whole brain just goes blank as a sheet. Nothing is there. I don't know where I am. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know. My train of thought just disappears. And that happens a lot as well. And again, one might say, well, those things aren't great. However, measuring them up against being depressed, I'll take the memory loss. And that's what I thought at first. But then the effects of the ECT wore off. And I would say within about, when did I have it? I'd say within about 6 months, I felt quite bad again. Nowhere near the level I had been at. But my depression came back. And I think with ECT, some people just have it once or twice and it kind of lasts, the effects last. Some people have top-ups. So there is an option, though. You can go back and have more and more and more. But, and I have thought about that in particularly dark moments. But then I'm thinking, if it's a lot to put your body through, and if it just wears off again, and I need more, and my memory gets worse, I'm stuck in this thing where I'm not really. It's not a long-term solution. It's like a short-term fix, and I would rather try and find things that I'd rather try and find a kind of equilibrium through other means that aren't quite so extreme. Again, I'll let me just, because I want to just. Yeah, it says ECT often works when other treatments are unsuccessful, but it may not work for everyone. That's another thing. It might not work for everyone. There's a lot of stigma attached to it, which is what I was talking about, people's images. Or I think a lot of people think of Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest when he has ECT, and it's barbaric and it's violent and it's scary, but it's not like that now. But it does say early treatments, high doses of electricity were administered without anaesthesia. I'm not good at that word, anaesthesia, leading to memory loss, fractured bones, and other serious side effects. fractured bones. That's harsh, isn't it? So presumably that meant that they didn't secure you. I can't remember if they put things... I'm trying to remember if they put restraints on me. I'm not sure. Maybe they did. But presumably that would mean that when they did it in the past, you just have it done and your whole body would be flailing, so you'd be like breaking bones and stuff. It's not good, is it? Why it's done. It can provide rapid, significant improvements in severe symptoms of several mental health conditions. So, and these are like severe depression, treatment-resistant depression. So that's kind of what I had, that the antidepressants, medication wasn't working anymore. I'd had psychotherapy. I'd tried lots of different things and nothing was making any difference. It was kind of a last resort. Severe mania. I don't suffer from that. Catatonia. Yeah, I sometimes get that. Agitation and aggression in people with dementia. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know it could be used in dementia. It's also quite useful for people who can't take medication for some reason, like pregnancy, older adults. Risks, confusion. Yeah, to be fair, I am fairly confused on a day-to-day basis anyway, so I don't know if it really had that much of an effect. Memory loss, physical side effects. On the days of an ACT treatment, some people experience nausea, headache, jaw pain, or muscle ache. I have to say I didn't suffer from any of those. Medical complications. I think the medical complications are ones that you would face having a general anaesthetic anyway. There are risks, medical risks, when you have a general anaesthetic. But yeah, I have mixed feelings about it. Again, I wonder, perhaps if I hadn't had it done, would I still be here? And that sounds like a really dramatic thing to say, but I was in a really, really bad way, and so I'm kind of think, well, if it saved my life, then it was worth trying it. It was worth having it done. And I think under those circumstances, if somebody is desperate and somebody is suicidal, and they've tried everything else, and there's nothing else, to do, it's definitely worth doing. I don't think people should be scared of it. It's not scary. Where I had it done, they were so lovely. Honestly, the mental health team were just the nicest people you could ever hope to meet. They were kind and gentle, and they talked me through it, and they made jokes. Well, not at my expense. Or maybe when I was under general anaesthetic, they laughed at me. But before I went under the anaesthetic, while I was having the catheter put in for the drugs to go into my body, we laughed. We were laughing about Monty Python and chatting, and they were just so nice. And there was nothing horrible about it. The only thing I didn't like was the boring bits. Going under the general anaesthetic was so lovely. It felt blissful going under the drugs. That moment when the anaesthetic would, you could feel the liquid kind of going in, and you would just absolutely relax. It was just beautiful. I really enjoyed that bit, even though it lasts about 10 seconds. Coming around from the anaesthetic, that was okay. Again, it was boring because you had to lie there for a certain amount of time before they'd let you get up. But they used to bring me tea and toast, because you can't eat before the general anaesthetic. So I was really hungry afterwards because I was having it in the morning, but I hadn't been able to eat. And then you have to sit. If you're having it done as an inpatient, so let's say you're on a psychiatric ward or you're in a treatment centre, then you would have it and then you go back to your room. But because I was an outpatient, I would have to go home. And so I'd have to wait in a waiting room, I think, for almost 2 hours before I was allowed to leave, and that was the most boring bit. The waiting room was hugely uncomfortable. It was cold, and I just had to sit there until they had ascertained that it was safe for me to leave. And then I couldn't drive myself, but I had 2 friends who drove me for the treatment. So it wasn't scary. It wasn't violent. it was very safe and gentle, and it helped. It did help to a certain extent. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is that if you're considering it, if you're thinking about it, don't be put off by horror stories that are based on fictional films or old, footage of people having it done. It's not like that anymore. I would say this about it, though, and this is what's a little bit odd. They don't know why it works. They're not exactly sure what's happening and why it works. And in fact, I'll just read you this thing as well. If I can find it, hang on. There we go. No one knows for certain how ECT helps treat severe depression and other mental illnesses. What is known, though, is that many chemical aspects of brain function are changed during and after seizure activity. These chemical changes may build upon one another, somehow reducing symptoms of severe depression or other mental illnesses. That's why ECT is most effective in people who receive a full course of multiple treatments. So yeah, they're not entirely sure what's going on, but I suppose if it helps, I was going to say if it helps, does it matter? It kind of does matter, but again, when you're desperate and you'll do anything, you're not really thinking about the ins and outs kind of thing. I think it's something people should talk about more. I think we should try and get rid of any stigma attached to ECT, and I think it should be offered. I wish there have been times in my life when I've been so ill and I've suffered for months and months and months in mental anguish, just awful, agonizing thoughts and feelings. And I wish back then it had been offered to me, because I think suffering for a long period of time, whether that be physically, emotionally, mentally, or those things combined, is awful. Suffering is awful, and it hurts, and it destroys you, it breaks you. It's very hard to recover from severe suffering. It leaves scars, and it leaves indelible marks upon you. And that, if you don't need to do that, if you don't need to suffer, if you don't need to go through that pain, if there's something that could help you, even if it's in the short term, but if there's something that can help lift you out of that so that you can then apply other things to the way you live to help all the things that we know are good. Again, the boring list: exercise, eating well. I now can't think of any others, but all those things that one wants to do but one can't. If the ECT can help bring you out of the depression enough to start a regime where you're doing those things, and those things are then also lifting you out of your depression, then I think that can only be a good thing. On the other hand, it's a personal choice, and a lot of people hate the idea. They would never have it done. They would be terrified if a loved one had it done. They are, just too scared of it, or too scared to find out about it, or they've made their minds up about it without actually knowing what it involves. So I just wanted to tell people that it's not this life or death choice. It's not an extreme. You don't go through hell with hopefully the chance that you might feel a little bit better. It's not an unpleasant experience. It can be a bit boring, and it's the logistics of organising it. If you have a family and a job, that can make it really difficult to do, because you have to you have to have a certain amount of time free to have the ECT, and you also need support. You need support from people, you need love and support, but you need practical support from people. Can you afford to get a taxi there and back every time? If you haven't got someone to drive you, can somebody drive you there? If you can't drive for the period when you're having the ECT, will that affect your job? Will that mean that you're not able to make a living? So there are all those things to consider. But the actual treatment itself, I would say, is pretty easy to go through. It's much easier than being so depressed that you want to die. It's much easier than that. I think most things are easier than that. So something to think about. And I don't know, if anyone ever sees this video, I wonder if there's anyone out there who's also had ECT, and if they could share their experiences, or if people have been offered it but turned it down, or people are thinking about having it done but they're scared, or I don't know. If anyone watches and they want to say something about electroconvulsive therapy and share any experiences that they've had, or ask questions, to each other, or to ask me questions or ask each other questions, then I think that would be a really great thing. To start up a conversation about it, and to share what people think about it. And I just hope that, no, that's it, I think. That's it. I've got to that point now where my brain's gone.